This is the Nats Minutecast. Nationals baseball lives here.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Believe in Nats. That's BLEAV and Nats. And the best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe or follow the Nats Minutecast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast. Give it a 5-star rating, leave some comments, and tell your friends. I sure would appreciate it. So in this edition of the Nats Minutecast, baseball is back, baby. And a lot at stake, I guess I'm going to say, for the Nationals in the 2026 season. And you might be thinking to yourself, a lot at stake. Have you been paying attention? And I have. And I know this is a bit of a different Nationals team than we have seen right out of the gate than we have in years past. That there's not the marquee names, right? There's not the Juan Soto, the Max Scherzer, all the big names, the Jason Worth of yesteryear, that it is pretty much young players, right? And you see that there's a lot of different players picked up on the waiver wire, and some of those players are then churned out for different players. That I think patience is going to be the biggest thing I'm going to say as a Nats fan this season. Now, before I even dig into the meat and potatoes of this episode, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that what is going on with the Nationals and the media covering them, as well, we found out not so long ago that the Washington Post completely gutted their sports department. Now, I don't know about you, but I bought the Washington Post subscription for the sports only. I'm going to be honest with you. It was Golden. It was Nussbaum, these kind of guys that covered the Nationals for the Washington Post. Not to mention, of course, a Capitals fan, being the host of Locked On Capitals and all of the fine work that Bailey Johnson did as well. Not to mention Barry Svrluga and all the great folks that covered the Nationals for so many years, and the Capitals, that and then you factor in, right, the Masson mess, right? And we're finally glad that we're past the Masson mess. And some premier voices extinguished there as well. Zuckerman, no longer working for Masson, has his own blog out there that, and I know that there are many fine blog writers out there that cover this team. I'm not trying to dunk on any of them, but usually a team that's worth its salt, some major publication, i.e. the Washington Post or something of that nature, covers your big league team. I feel like right now, and I understand that media has changed, that it's kind of the great, Wild West out there, that it's Subtext or Substack and all these kind of different sources. That's where it goes out in these independent blogs. Gone are the days of these major news outlets covering your local team. And right now, I'm going to be honest with you, there is no major news outlet in the DC area that is covering the Nationals. Again, I know there's blogs and they do great work, but I think you know what I'm talking about, that this is kind of uncharted territory. So a tip of the hat to the fine fellows over at the Nats Chat podcast. Love those guys over there, Al Galdi and Mark Zuckerman over there that cover that team, that, we need the voices. And I hate to put myself in that category, but I try to cover this team as best I can for you when I'm not covering a hockey team 5 days a week, that we need the people that cover this team to stick together because this team is in transition. And I think that, in a lot of ways, it would be easy to kind of walk away. Like, this team isn't going to be good for years, right? That, I hear about them on the streaming services, and people are like, you might want to wait a couple years before you invest that $100 or whatever it is. But I'm here to say I'm a Nats fan. I'm a proud Nats fan. And if you are as well, first of all, thank you for joining me on the YouTube, primarily an audio podcast, Apple, Spotify, all those kind of things. This is the short form, which today might be a longer form. Generally, the longer form I cover for Believe in Nationals. So thank you for joining, and subscribe, follow. I like to think there are some great Nationals podcasts out there. And yeah, like I say, sponsoring these shows, subscribing, following these shows, that is what is going to keep them churning out more content. So that's rather here nor there. Let's dive into the Nationals. Like I said, a lot different than we have seen in years before. And this is the most uncertain spring training the Nationals have ever had. Pitchers and catchers are officially reporting today at CACTI Park of the Palm Beach. And this does not feel like a normal spring training, that we said goodbye to the old guard, Rizzo, Martinez. And, the learners had seen enough in that leadership group that they wanted to turn the page. So new president of baseball ops, Paul Toboni, new general manager, Ani Kilambi, and new manager, Blake Butera. Even a new president of business operations, and Jason Sinaraja. So this doesn't happen unless ownership changes, and ownership didn't change. So what does that tell you? It tells you this organization decided the old way wasn't just flawed, it was done. And I guess the thing, just starting the show today is that we don't know, what to expect out of this new leadership group. I think that Paul Toboni, Ani Kilambi, Blake Butera, their change, it's a change, right? It's a lot of young guys in there. Conversely, when it was a lot of, older guys, but that's what you're seeing around pro sports, where it's not the old recycle bin like it has been in years before. So Paul Toboni, of course, coming from the Red Sox, Ani Kilambi coming from the Phillies, and Blake Butera, who has a history with the Tampa organization, even though he hasn't really been behind the bench on a big league team. So there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of crossing fingers and toes and young players that this could, be a great step forward for this team, or let's be honest, this could be a train wreck. But like that change, like I said, the learners had seen enough, and even before camp officially open, we're hearing pitchers and already throwing out batting practice to hitters. That's urgency. That's Toboni. We're not waiting for March to figure this thing out. And 3 trades, a Rule 5 pickup, waiver claims everywhere, and 1 MLB free agent signing above the league minimum, which for franchise lately counts as a big deal. Now, these are new names to me. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. So if I butcher them a bit, it's, we don't know how long these players are going to even be here. Now, they're talking to Miles Mikolas. Is that a savior move? No, but it tells you Toboni has been hunting any reliable MLB arms for weeks, and he's not hiding it. The rotation and bullpen are still a giant question mark, and I don't think that is too shocking to say. So let's get into arms, because this is where things get uncomfortable, right? That when we talk about Mackenzie Gore getting shipped out of town, that he was that guy, right, that was going to be the anchor. And, I know he didn't get the run support that he had hoped for last year. And I think that, maybe didn't get quite the fair shake. But now it is a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks. We're talking about Cade Cavalli could be, the cream of the crop, right? And, that's quite a thing to say when he was dealing with the injuries and everything else that he was dealing with there. So, you've got 29 pitchers reporting, but 4 are rehabbing: DJ Hers, Yarlin Susana, Travis Sikora, and Trevor Williams. Now, huge moment for Travis Sikora, throwing for the first time since Tommy John. That is real progress, and that matters. But beyond that, tell me confidently who is in the rotation after Cade Cavalli, Jake Irvin, and Foster Griffin, right? That, we're hoping, that one of these pitchers, or a few of them, I guess I'm going to say, are going to take the reins. Because like I say, who is going to be after that? Cade Cavalli, Jake Irvin, or Foster Griffin? You can't, and neither can the Nats. Is Brad Lord a starter or a reliever? What about Mitchell Parker? You saw glimpses of greatness from him last year. And are we stretching someone out because we have to, not because we want to? The bullpen isn't much clearer. You have locks Clayton Beeter, Cole Henry, Jackson Rutledge. Then there's the Rule 5 wild card Griff McGarry. He either makes the MLB roster or he's gone. No stash, no patience, no development runway. In that mix, I guess I forgot Josiah Gray. FanGraphs already projects this bullpen as the worst in baseball again. The worst. I guess we can only go up from here, right? I have to ask myself this again and again, and it's something I've talked about on this show before. Is how did we get here? How did we get down in the cellar? Hello, anybody up there? Can you throw us a lifeline? And, if you thought that Toboni coming to town and Ani Kilambi, that they were going to come here and right this ship overnight in the 2026 baseball, we are back, baby. Well, you better temper expectations, because I have a feeling that this is going to be a long ride. Now, worst ERA last year, worst projection this year. You can say projections don't matter, but when the numbers match what your eyes saw for 6 months, that's not noise. That is reality. And, certain positions, you thought were buttoned up. We're talking catcher position here. Keibert Ruiz, he's the guy that got the big deal, right? And Adams behind him. That's who it's going to be. Well, it got a little bit more interesting as Harry Ford was acquired in a move that sent Jose A. Ferrer out to the Mariners. That was your closer, right? The stability, any kind of stability that you had in this organization, gone, right? And I like the move. I say that slightly hyperbolically. That Keibert Ruiz was one of those moves where, we made a big trade years ago, and we don't want this guy getting away. He's going to be the guy behind the dish, except that he really hasn't been. That we've seen glimpses of greatness from him, but nothing like, that's our guy. That's our guy for the long term. So let's talk about the uncertainty behind the plate. It's kind of been the issue for this team for years. And this is Keibert Ruiz, the highest paid position player on the roster. And it's kind of like the sum total of that, you hear that Rizzo got fired and you're like, yep, yeah, I can see why, these kind of things. Does that mean he's safe? I don't think so. Not with Paul Toboni running this. You've got Harry Ford, the top catching prospect and possible future. Drew Millis looked legit in 2025 before breaking his hand. Riley Adams is off the 40-man. Trace Barrera is back as depth, and Caleb Lomavita, the second highest rated catching prospect, is in camp, but almost certainly starting in the minors. And he was the guy, in my estimation, before Harry Ford, that when you talked about kind of the trajectory of this team, he was supposed to be the next guy. That guy I'm speaking of is Caleb Lomavita. So that's a lot of names and no clear answers, which brings us right back to the theme of the spring. This roster is unfinished, and Toboni knows it. The front office knows it, and honestly, the players probably feel it as well. One signing, one waiver claim, one trade, and suddenly the rotation, a bullpen, or catcher depth chart looks completely different. So, yeah, pitchers and catchers reporting is exciting, but this spring, this is about auditions. It's about survival and reshaping the Nationals in real time. And that ultimately is the real story. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the players that should impress the most. Should impress is the operative word. I'll discuss straight ahead. If you're on the hunt for a delicious high-protein snack, look no further than Righteous Felon. This family-owned brand is all about premium pasture-raised Black Angus beef, hormone and antibiotic-free, with mouth-watering flavors like OG hickory and 10 grams of protein per serving. You'll get the boost you need for all your adventures. Plus, they have keto-friendly and gluten-free options, and they support sustainability with the Conservation Alliance. Ready to snack smarter? Use promo code Minutecast for 15% off Slap that out of your mouth. 20% off for a Valentine's Day special. Head on over to righteousfelon.com. That's righteousfelon.com with the promo code MINUTECAST and grab your new favorite snack today. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. So let's talk about players that should make us feel happy. You know, these are the guys that have pretty much buttoned up a roster spot, you know, that there's a lot of uncertainty on this team. So the one steady, the one constant we want to have is within the players that I'm talking about next here. So this season, it's not about patience anymore. It's about production. The Nats are officially past the someday phase of this rebuild. This is the year where the young players stop being names on prospect lists and start deciding actual ball games, lineups, matchups, late innings, all of it. And there are three young players in particular who could absolutely swing the direction of this season. Let's start with the man himself, Dylan Crews. He is the guy, we know history at LSU, number 2 overall pick in 2023. And I think, of course, it's not too much of a shocker, is going to be the future in the outfield for the Nats. And it's not about hype anymore. He's a number 2 overall pick, like I said, in 23. He's not the LSU legend. He is a big boy, big leaguer now. And Crews dealt with a soft tissue injury last year, which slowed things down. But heading into this season, he's built to be a core outfielder for this team. He encompasses 3 things: speed, power, and defense. And that balance is exactly what the Nats need. But here's the thing: flashes are not enough. We want steps forward this year. We're not going to, I'm tired of talking about next year, even though it's said this team's not going to be good till 2028. That's the hard part. So, like I said, what the Nats need to see from him is consistency. Not the 2 weeks heater followed by a month-long slump. They need steady at-bats, solid reads in the outfield, and someone who gets going early and stays there. This is a pivotal season. If Crews produces like a real everyday player, not just a former top pick, the entire lineup settles. If he doesn't, then you're still searching. And, you know, bang your head against the wall if Dylan Crews doesn't work, because, you know, you look at the outfield, there are some things in flux: Jacob Young, Robert Hassel III, those kind of things that, you know, and all of this, of course, is James Wood, that there is some certainty, kind of. All right, next, let's talk about another guy ready to make an impact, and that's Brady House, quietly holding the whole thing together. And talking about him, he's not flashy, he's not loud, and he's not selling jerseys yet. But third base, that job is his to lose. House brings something this roster desperately needs. What is that? Reliability. His defense is already ahead of his bat, and that matters a lot, especially on a team trying to limit mistakes and avoid giving games away. Now, what people miss is how much House impacts the rest of the roster, because when third base is stable, you don't have to keep reshuffling the infield. You can move guys like Yandy Morales with intention, not desperation. And it's been, you know, the big giant question mark for a long time is who is the guy that is going to seize the day and third base. House makes outs matter. He wears pitchers down, and when relievers get tired, that's when he sneaks up on you. Like Crews, the next step is clear: stop being a top prospect and start being a top MLB player. That is the jump. Is he ready for it? You know, these are the players, like, we're going to be good, right? When House is here, and, you know, all CJ Abrams, and, you know, it's still a work in progress, still needs a little bit more time to marinate. But like I talked about in the first segment, Harry Ford, real competition behind the plate. And this is where it gets interesting. Even though Keibert Ruiz is the highest roster player. I don't think that really matters a whole lot. Fresh in from Seattle and immediately stepping in a position of need, catchers have been, let's be honest, inconsistent. And Ford changes that conversation. He's not just battling Keibert Ruiz and Drew Millis for a roster spot. He's pushing the entire catching room. Ford work counts. He gets on base. He controls the game at the plate, and that alone makes opposing pitchers uncomfortable. More pitches, more traffic, more chances to score. And when you add real competition at catcher, the standard rises. Preparation sharpens. Pitch calling improves without anyone saying a word. Paul Toboni has already said Ford has a real shot, if you can believe it, to make the opening day roster. The question that's out in the room is he going to actually supplant Keibert Ruiz? I know it sounds crazy, but I don't think it is. And if he does, it's because the Nationals are not done settling. So here's why this matters. Here is the 30,000-foot view. The youth movement isn't symbolic. These aren't placeholders. These guys fill real holes on the roster. Dylan Cruz, Brady House, Harry Ford, CJ Abrams, the Seaver King, these kind of guys. These are first-round talents arriving exactly when the Nats need dependable contributors, not future promises. Their development won't just shape box scores. It'll shape lineup construction, defensive stability, and whether the team can survive the momentum swings of a long season. What's the bottom line? What is the bottom line? The Nationals need these kids to step up, not someday, but now. And if they do, the season looks a lot different. That much I know for sure. All right, so coming up here after the break, the Nats told us exactly what they're looking for in the bullpen. What is that? I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, a word from our next sponsor here at SeatGeek. Are you heading to a Nats game this summer? Maybe you're going to see the Caps, the Wizards, something like that. Make your life easier with SeatGeek, the only ticket app that rates every deal so you know what you're getting, and you're getting the best bang for your buck. And right now, SeatGeek is giving listeners of the Nats Minutecast $20 off your first ticket purchase over $50. Now listen, life is expensive nowadays, if you haven't noticed. And if you can see the Caps, Nats, Wizards, Commanders when it's the football season, and you can take $20 off, well, $20 goes a long way. Just download the SeatGeek app or visit the link in the show notes and use promo code Minutecast. That's promo code MINUTECAST. That's Minutecast for $20 off. Your seat starts here. All right, welcome back into the final segment of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. Again, before we go, at the end of this episode here, when you're done listening to this episode, go over to the Nats Minutecast, hit follow, subscribe, wherever you find your podcast. And if you're on YouTube, hit a like, hit a follow. That way you'll know when the new episodes drop. So in the final segment here, we're talking about the Nationals and what they want in the bullpen. And it's, not what you expect, but maybe exactly what you should expect, because this one is one of those transactions that looks small, but actually says a lot. The Nationals have acquired Andre Granillo from the Cardinals in exchange for Soriano. And right, if you've been paying attention, this fits a pattern. What do we know? Strike thrower, low walk rate, miss bats without chaos, and limit base runners. Now, Granillo isn't a velocity monster. He's not some top 100 prospect, but, the guy knows how to pitch. The AAA numbers are real. The whip is real. The ability to not beat himself is very, very real. So Soriano had arm strength, sure, but inconsistency never really went away, and is the opposite profile. Cleaner innings, quicker outs, fewer heart attacks. And that's what this bullpen needs: stability, predictability, boring baseball in the middle innings. And this is ultimately, if you're asking me, a process move, not a headline move, and the Nationals are clearly comfortable making those right now. Now, Granillo is a low-key bet on development, not just depth. So zooming out here a little bit, he's 25, already tested the big leagues. He's dominated AAA. That's not coincidence. That's a guy who's probably closer to his floor than the ceiling. And honestly, that's the kind of arm you want floating between the bullpen and shuttle rolls earlier in the year. And what are some of the things that he can provide? He can handle leverage in short bursts, can pitch multiple innings, doesn't melt with traffic, fits the option game. That feels like the Nats saying, yeah, we think there's more there. Maybe, hopefully, right? Fingers and toes crossed, a tweak, a roll adjustment, maybe cleaner innings. Suddenly you've got a real bullpen piece instead of a mystery box. Also worth noting here is Trevor Williams to the 60-day IL clears roster space, but it also clarifies intent. They want arms like Granillo available, visible, and competing early. Now, this, just let's be honest here, isn't about April stats. It's about building a bullpen that doesn't collapse every third night. So that's where we're at here. The first day of camp is about tone, not results. So as we get going here, it's understanding who this team is. And pitchers and catchers report, nothing really happening yet, but everything happened. The first day of camp is about tone. Who's there really early, who's, talking, who's throwing with intent, who's being watched closely, and seeing which players really pop off the page. That's the big thing is, like I said, we are, in a season of transition, and there's nothing for sure right now with the Nationals, except for, some of the players I talked about earlier in the show, and even them, that we're past the point where we're waiting for these guys to show up someday. Someday is right now. We need to see players ready to produce, or I think that, he's got to look at it. Toboni's got to look at it like, okay, we got to move on from this player. He has no allegiances with these players. He's got no warm fuzzies with them. He wants to put the best guys out on the field. And if you're a Nationals fan, you got to love that at the end of the day, right? So that's where we're closing up this episode today is, I'm not feeling overly optimistic. And I know I shouldn't say that. I think that this, if we think the last couple seasons have been rough, this one could be equally as rough. We might get a chance to see that guy performed well in that situation, not so well in this situation. That player who we thought was going to be good is not living up to what we had hoped for, and slowly whittle away and, retain the players, add the players, move the players out that aren't a part, but keep the ones that are here for the long-term growth of this team. But again, my expectations have been tempered, and there are no delusions of grandeur with the 2026 Nationals. If any player can take a step forward and kind of cement themselves as a part of the future, then I'm going to say this season is not a loss. All right, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this edition of the Nats Minutecast. Again, primarily an audio podcast. I'll get on YouTube as often as I can, but wherever you find your podcasts, follow, subscribe, 5-star rating, tell your friends. I sure would appreciate it. This has been the Nats Minutecast, and I'll talk to you again next time.